He was Captain Marvel. I always felt like that it evoked him being military. Plus, I don't know why they didn't use it in the movie, because you don't need to be super buff, because you've got a jacket on with like shoulders.
Yeah, and I just thought it made him a little different from Superman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Was it fun to draw?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Because you had so many other characters to draw. It was setting him to look distinctive.
Yeah, well, he was the like I said, he was sort of the naive Captain Whitebread is what Guy Gardner kept calling him. So he played well opposite Guy. We were only allowed to have him for like 6 issues, like contractually for some reason.
Really?
Yes, that's what they told me.
Did DC own it outright at that point? Because they used to pay, I found out later, right, when I was doing All-Star Squadron, that was early 80s, we weren't allowed to use him unless we had a whole storyline with him. You couldn't use him as a cameo because DC would have to pay Fawcett like
DC, okay, so the history, and I don't have all the dates exactly, but when DC acquired rights to Captain Marvel from Fawcett in 1971 or so, and Denny relaunched it under the Shazam monthly title, until I think 85 or so with Crisis on Infinite Earths, it was licensed from Fawcett, and when DC accidentally included the other Fawcett heroes in the JLA-JSA crossover in the mid-70s, Fawcett went, we didn't give you rights to those characters. That was a mistake, which is why they never showed up again. By 1985, when we got to the Crisis, we suddenly were able to use the Marvel family to a degree, and then I think they bought him outright in time for that Justice League book, so that we could get to Spy Smasher and Bullet Man and the other heroes that were part of the package. So yeah, you may have had a limitation in '86.
Or there could have been the
I
time.
did.
'87, yeah.
But
I
Kevin,
wasn't lying.
Kevin, what was the timing? Kevin, what was the timing though for Legends? Because Legends did.
Legends was
before.
'86, launching Justice League,
JLI
which came out in
Justice
spring
came
of
out.
So maybe it was
'87.
Roy's miniseries. Maybe that was why, because he started fresh with the Shazam.
Shazam: The New Beginning.
You know, and I just remember that we couldn't have them past.
It's just in
56.
those days, the big thing fans don't realize a lot of times is that in those days, editorial offices controlled their characters, and they didn't always loan you out a character.
Oh, they didn't want us to have any
Well, I'm
characters.
just saying, that was, right, I mean, you had a storyline with Batman, you weren't gonna have Batman running around in some other book that didn't reflect that.
Yeah.
So it really had to go, they go to the editor and say, can we use a character, or can we, do a storyline, what can we do with it?
I liked when you had him, weren't you editing World's Finest? When you had him featured and the late great Don Newton was drawing. That to me made a huge impression on me. I just loved Don Newton's stuff.
Well, at the end of the Shazam comic, it had moved to different editorial offices, and they tried to make it realistic. Alan Weiss drew, I think, one of the last issues of that, and then Don Newton, and then moved into World's Finest when it was $1 book.
And Nelson Bridwell was writing those.
Yeah.
And he was he was a huge fan of that stuff, so it showed. I mean, there was definitely love in there.
I mean, so when you were editing it for World's Finest with Nelson, I mean, were you trying to maintain that flavor or go more realistic?
When I heard about that, I wanted to be part of it because it seemed unique. But I thought our production facility is up to capacity now. We're going to add 48 pages a week to that. Isn't anybody thinking about the fact that this is impossible?
We got the stinger right in the top.
So I did the job.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't have, I always think we owe the readers our best shot.
Yep.
Best we can do here and now. And that's what I tried to do. I didn't have any emotional investment in it. I had the investment of a guy who took a certain amount of pride in the fact that he was a pro.
Okay, so let's talk about the characters in the world of Shazam. Some people take the position that Billy and Captain Marvel are separate entities who trade places. Some just think, no. Some think it's just Billy in a new body.
I'm going to jump in on this.
Please.
This is like to me, it's a dumb argument, because I remember Roy Thomas, who grew up with that stuff. He was of a mind that they were two separate beings because he referred to Billy separately or whatever. And I always felt like if they're the same person, it's a wish fulfillment. If they're two separate beings, it's horrible. I mean, it's the idea of a kid getting to be a superhero. If he actually doesn't get to participate in that, it's a really depressing concept. You know, I like the idea of him being a kid. There's that kid is still in there, but he's got an adult body. It's magic, right? An adult body, but he gets to have those adventures. He gets to meet Superman. He gets to, you know, be a hero, basically. He gets to fly. That's what I liked about the teaser trailer for the movie, is I thought they captured that aspect. Made me happy to see that, because there's like a joy in it, especially when he first gets his powers. You know, I mean, when I was working on the book, my feeling was that this was of all the books you could do, I mean, Superman is generally always going to win, but Captain Marvel always felt like he should win, because then when he loses, he's going to be crushed. This goes back to me reading Spider-Man in the Ditko era. With it was mind-boggling. I read him as back issues when I was 10 years old or so, but Spider-Man loses to Dr. Octopus and he thinks he's done, because obviously no superhero ever lost to a bad guy. Those concepts always stuck with me, and that's kind of what I always thought of when I was doing Shazam. Was my way of updating it was to bring it into the 60s Spider-Mans that I grew up reading, Spider-Man, you know, issue 50 on or whatever. So that was my only concession. When I did the book, they said it had to be integrated into the DC universe so that guest stars and he could be in the crossovers and stuff. That was pretty much the basic thing, and you have to update them somewhat.
Where was Fawcett City in the U.S.?
Fawcett City, to me, was in Wisconsin.
It was where?
It was in Wisconsin, because it wasn't used in, you know, I mean,
Maryland.
Wisconsin's a real Midwestern place, you know. Other people have suggested, since I guess the Fawcett family was from Minnesota or something, but I always used Wisconsin. Jeff Johns used it in the Stargirl series that he was doing back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And he said, where is it? And I think he turned it into maybe Indiana or something, but it just feels like it should have been in that, because I mean, it snowed, so it can't be Florida. You know, it snowed there. So I like the idea.
Like a
of
more urban Madison.
small, right, it was just, it still has that smallness to it. It's not like, you know, traffic jams and things like that.
We thought it was a good idea not to get too specific, because you didn't want to cut off further story possibilities. It was established on issue 23 that you can't cross that river for me. I deliberately asked my guys, give enough information so that they can understand what's going on, but don't try and map out every block of Gotham City.
We don't want to lose those readers who hate New Jersey
My parents are from Jersey.
or Wisconsin.
Now, Jeff, you only had 2 issues to play with the characters. Were there things moments, powers, things you wanted to cram in there to satisfy you creatively?
Gosh, yeah, it's like, oh, I got to get Mr. Adam in there. I got to get Mr. Mind. I got to get Eyebag. Yeah, and I did. I got them all in there, and my buddy Evan Doc Shaner helped me. Which was a dream project for him, because he loves the Marvel family so much.
Right.
And it's some of the only pages I think he hasn't sold from. So good luck trying to get those. I did. Getting back to your thing though, you know, in the early Fawcett stuff, Billy and Captain Marvel talked about each other like they were separate people. And I have a little working explanation of how that can be, and they're still the same person, but I'm not spilling it out here just in case I ever get a chance to actually.
Schizophrenia.
Yeah, no. That's another good one. That's what they go with now. Just in case I can ever get paid for it. But I did. I got to have this one scene where because in the Convergence thing, they had to fight other cities and realms and stuff like that to stay alive, and they fought the Gotham by Gaslight Batman. So
That's a matchup.
I know. I thought, well, this ought to be quick.
How about Infinity Inc. Jonah Hex?
Yeah.
In the futuristic Jonah Hex, dude.
Yeah, it was.
We didn't get to choose those, by the way.
It was quite a thing, but you know, I picked Gotham by Gaslight because I thought, well, that'll be fun to draw. for someone else. And, but I did have that. I took a lot of liberties with the Augustan version of that Batman, and I had that Batman generate a big bolt of lightning to knock him out of the sky. And when it hits him, so he turns into Billy. But I did a scene which is something I hadn't seen before, where Billy and Captain Marvel are like in the milliseconds of existence of changing, are able to talk to each other in the lightning strike.
I forgot about that.
And and I was like, yeah, I felt like, hey, that's something neat. I got to add a little something. I'm still not quite explaining their dynamic and how the physics of it work, but I liked the idea of Billy, for a change, getting to talk to Captain Marvel.
So any bolt of lightning will change them?
That's the way they added. If it was a big bolt of lightning, it could trigger it.
So
Savannah was always smacking him with lightning to change him back, or gagging him constantly. No character in history has been gagged more than
Wonder Woman.
I knew before I got to the end of the sentence, I'm going to be corrected on this.
Only because of the bondage stuff in the building.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that differentiated the Fawcett superhero stuff, specifically the Captain Marvel titles, then the DC stuff, and later DC Marvel and all, it was more lighthearted. There was Beck's cartoon style kept it from being overly grounded, and I think Captain Marvel has always been has had challenges fitting into DC continuity because of all of that. Should it have stayed in its own reality, do you think?
I think so.
Yeah, it belongs to one side of the DC universe.
You were told to fit it, but give me your druthers.
Well, yeah, I didn't want to take work away from him.
No, I think, I understand that we tried to keep Fawcett City its own thing. But as far as things spilling out, it's not unreasonable to have that shared in the DC universe, to have a talking tiger even. I mean, I tried to make an explanation. I did more of a Calvin and Hobbes with it. And so he was a magical talking tiger, but he was originally a doll. And I always had a problem with later, I mean, again, it's not like I have a problem with it that I'm going to start writing angry blog posts. But I didn't like the idea of it being a real tiger and drawn as a real tiger, any more than I would want Captain Marvel drawn without that upturned nose and the jaw. These characters have to have a very specific distinction so that they're not generic or interchangeable. But when you look at like Talkie Tawny, why can't he exist? I mean, you have amazingly crazy stuff in other corners of the DC universe. I mean, magic exists, and so it doesn't. It would be one thing. I know Denny was right and smart about trying to maintain Gotham in its own kind of way. It was this dark kind of city, and I think that's important to keep each of the characters in the books, distinctive, so that they each have their own flavor, and it's not, oh, you can pick up any of these books and they're all the same.
I would bet the mortgage money that everything we're talking about never occurred to Parker and his crew.
Right.
No, of course not, because that's how it was back in
They just
1940.
turned the stuff out, including Beck, who's first professional I ever met, apart from Stan and Roy.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. They didn't take it seriously, and they didn't know what they were doing. I recently reread some of the original Adam, and his power was he was short. He was right.
Yes.
And I think, and he seemed to have nothing else, no other power, not a particularly tough guy. And I think that back then, whoever was writing it thought, the costume is what this is about. So if we give him a costume, he's a superhero.
Well, it was also, he was diminutive, so they figured it was concentrating his muscular strength, so he got a power punch like an atom, because remember, we had split the atom by then, so it was in the news, it was in the
But he did
the
have,
air.
he had the weightlifting kind of, the
muscles.
glove thing, and he had these straps like, he was going to do a
belt.
deadlift or something.
Yeah. He just had a big chip on his shoulder is the deal. It's like, I'm just going to hit you.
Well,
This is what a lot, I mean, Roy will admit that he has that kind of, chip on his shoulder to a degree too. I think but that's good. Everybody, when you're reading comics, if you love comics, you find something that actually triggers something or some element, that you can sympathize with or what have you, I mean, I think that's what's cool about having such a variety, is that you can find something in any of these characters.
One of the interesting things, for those less familiar with the Golden Age stuff, what you have to remember is, while Superman may have started superheroes and everything that followed, which includes Captain Marvel, there was a stretch of time where Captain Marvel was outselling Superman by a
2 million copies a month.
to the point where he was appearing in a book, I think it was Nickel Comics, that came out every third week. And there was Captain Marvel Adventures, and Nickel Comics, and Whiz Comics, and before you knew it, there were all the spin-off characters long before there was a Superboy or a Supergirl. Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel, and the Lieutenant Marvels, and you were talking about Uncle Dudley before?
Uncle Marvel.
Uncle Marvel? I mean,
What I've always wondered about is Captain Marvel Jr., because he was handicapped.
right.
So as Captain Marvel, he could fly and bullets would bounce, all that superhero stuff. Why did he ever go back to being Freddie Freeman?
See, I thought about all that stuff, and when I was doing the book, the reason I called it The Power of Shazam was that the power itself was infinite. The more they shared it, each one had less.
Oh, that's interesting.
So in essence, the different variations could choose not to be Captain Marvels, and the main guy would be more powerful.
Which may also explain why Freddie and Mary don't quite age the same way Billy does.
Well, the thought I had with that, again, because it was the 90s at that point, we were all trying to not just throw crap out there, we were thinking stuff through. And again, this is what you're saying, like...
As opposed to today or back then?
I mean, even, honestly, 60s, 70s, there was a time when, like what Denny said, I mean, it's no different than the Golden Age in a sense that people just had fun with it, and it wasn't like they thought it probably had impact, because the comic readership would age out of reading books.